There is a decision that many empaths spend their entire lives avoiding, and that decision is choosing themselves without feeling guilty for it. Empaths are naturally sensitive to the emotions of others. They can walk into a room and feel tension without anyone speaking. They notice pain hidden behind smiles, exhaustion hidden behind laughter, and loneliness hidden behind silence. Because of this deep emotional awareness, empaths often become the emotional caretakers of everyone around them. They listen, they comfort, they sacrifice, and they carry burdens that were never truly theirs to carry. But over time, something dangerous begins to happen. In trying so hard to protect everyone else from pain, they slowly abandon themselves. Carl Jung understood something profound about human nature. He believed that growth begins the moment a person stops running from the truth within themselves. For empaths, that truth is often uncomfortable. It is the realization that constantly saving others does not always come from love alone. Sometimes it comes from fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood, and fear of losing connection. Many empaths would rather stay emotionally exhausted than risk disappointing someone. They silence their own needs to keep peace. They say yes when their soul is screaming no. And after years of this pattern, they no longer know where other people end and where they begin. The difficult decision they avoid is setting boundaries. Not because they are weak, but because boundaries force them to confront guilt. Empaths often believe that saying no makes them selfish. They believe walking away from unhealthy relationships makes them cruel. They believe protecting their own energy means they are failing others. But Jung would say this is exactly where transformation begins. Because every time you betray yourself to keep someone else comfortable, you teach your mind that your own emotional well-being is less important than everyone else's expectations. Many empaths confuse self-sacrifice with love. But true love should not require self-destruction. Real compassion does not mean carrying every emotional wound you encounter. You were never meant to become emotionally responsible for every broken person who enters your life. Yet many empaths remain trapped in cycles where they constantly rescue, fix, and heal others while quietly falling apart inside. They become emotionally drained, mentally exhausted, and spiritually disconnected from themselves. What makes this even harder is that empaths are deeply affected by disappointment and emotional tension. They replay conversations in their minds. They overanalyze reactions. They carry guilt for things they did not even cause. So when the time comes to make a difficult decision, leaving a toxic relationship, saying no, distancing themselves, or choosing personal peace, they hesitate. Not because they do not know the answer, but because they fear the emotional consequences of finally choosing themselves. But growth requires courage. Jung believed that becoming whole means facing uncomfortable truths about who you are and what you allow. The moment an empath realizes they cannot heal everyone is the moment real freedom begins. Not everyone will understand your boundaries. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some people only felt comfortable with you when you were overgiving, over-explaining, and overextending yourself. The most powerful decision an empath can make is finally refusing to abandon themselves just to keep others comfortable. One of the greatest dangers empaths face is not cruelty from others, but the slow exhaustion that comes from constantly abandoning themselves to keep everyone else emotionally comfortable. Many empaths become so focused on being needed that they lose connection with who they truly are. They spend years becoming what others expect, what others need, and what others depend on, but very little time asking themselves a simple question: what do I need? This is the hidden cost of constantly pleasing others. It does not destroy you all at once. It happens slowly, quietly, and almost invisibly. At first, people-pleasing feels noble. You become the person everyone trusts, everyone calls, everyone leans on during difficult times. You listen endlessly, give endlessly, and forgive endlessly. You become emotionally available to everyone, even when you are emotionally drained yourself. And because empaths naturally feel the pain of others so deeply, they convince themselves that sacrificing their own peace is simply part of being compassionate. But Carl Jung understood that when a person continuously suppresses their authentic self to gain approval or avoid conflict, they begin losing their identity piece by piece. The problem is that people-pleasing creates an illusion of connection while quietly building resentment underneath. Many empaths smile while emotionally exhausted. They say yes while internally overwhelmed. They tolerate behavior that hurts them because they fear disappointing others more than they fear betraying themselves. Over time, this creates emotional imbalance. You begin feeling invisible in your own life because your entire identity becomes centered around managing everyone else's emotions. What makes this pattern so dangerous is that society often rewards it. People praise the empath for always being kind, always understanding, always available. But very few people stop to ask how much emotional damage it costs to constantly suppress your own needs. Jung believed that anything buried within the human psyche does not disappear. It waits in the unconscious mind, growing stronger over time. So when empaths continuously ignore their exhaustion, anger, sadness, or disappointment, those emotions eventually surface in unhealthy ways. Sometimes through anxiety, sometimes through emotional numbness, sometimes through burnout so severe that they no longer recognize themselves. Many empaths also struggle with guilt whenever they attempt to pull back. The moment they try setting boundaries, resting, or saying no, they feel selfish. They worry they are becoming cold or uncaring. But protecting your energy is not selfishness. It is self-respect. The truth is that some people become comfortable benefiting from your lack of boundaries. They expect unlimited access to your time, emotions, and attention because you trained them to expect it. And the moment you begin prioritizing yourself, those same people may accuse you of changing. What they truly mean is that they no longer have unlimited access to your emotional energy. This is why so many empaths feel emotionally trapped. They become addicted to external validation because pleasing others temporarily gives them a sense of worth. But no amount of approval can heal the emptiness created by self-abandonment. Real confidence is not built by constantly being needed. It is built by knowing your value even when you stop overextending yourself for others. Jung taught that true healing begins when a person stops performing for acceptance and starts living authentically. That requires courage, because authenticity often disappoints people who benefited from your silence. But emotional freedom only begins when you stop measuring your worth by how much of yourself you sacrifice for others. The moment you stop losing yourself to please everyone else is the moment you finally begin reclaiming your life. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries a hidden part of themselves that they try to avoid. He called this the shadow self. The shadow is made up of the emotions, thoughts, fears, and desires we suppress because we believe they are unacceptable. For empaths, this shadow often becomes extremely heavy because they spend so much of their lives trying to appear kind, patient, understanding, and emotionally available. They become so focused on being good for others that they deny the existence of their own anger, resentment, frustration, and pain. But what is ignored within the mind never truly disappears. It waits silently beneath the surface. Many empaths are uncomfortable with their own darker emotions. They fear anger because they associate it with cruelty. They fear confrontation because they associate it with rejection. They fear expressing disappointment because they do not want to hurt anyone. So instead of processing these emotions honestly, they bury them deep inside. They smile through disrespect. They tolerate emotional neglect. They forgive repeatedly without healing. On the outside, they appear calm and compassionate, but internally they are carrying emotional exhaustion that grows heavier year after year. Jung understood that true healing cannot happen through denial. A person becomes emotionally mature not by pretending darkness does not exist, but by learning to face it consciously. This is why the shadow self is so important. The shadow is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that you are human. Every empath has emotions they are afraid to acknowledge. Some carry hidden resentment toward the people they constantly sacrifice for. Some carry anger toward those who took advantage of their kindness. Others carry deep sadness because they spent years feeling emotionally unseen while giving everything to others. The problem is that suppressed emotions eventually control behavior in unconscious ways. An empath who constantly suppresses anger may suddenly explode after years of silence. An empath who avoids confrontation may become emotionally distant without understanding why. An empath who ignores personal pain may begin feeling emotionally numb, disconnected, or chronically exhausted. This happens because the shadow always demands recognition. Jung warned that what remains unconscious eventually controls your life from behind the scenes. Facing the shadow requires honesty. It means admitting that kindness does not erase your need for boundaries. Compassion does not erase your pain. Empathy does not mean tolerating disrespect. Many empaths struggle with this because they built their identity around being emotionally supportive. But emotional maturity begins the moment you stop pretending you are endlessly unaffected by what hurts you. This process is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront truths you avoided for years. You may realize that some relationships were built entirely on your emotional overgiving. You may realize that your fear of disappointing others caused you to betray yourself repeatedly. You may even discover anger toward people you once believed you fully forgave. That realization can feel frightening for empaths because they fear becoming bitter or selfish. But acknowledging pain is not the same as becoming consumed by it. In fact, healing only becomes possible when you stop pretending the wound is not there. Jung believed that integrating the shadow creates wholeness. When empaths stop running from their suppressed emotions, they begin reclaiming their personal power. They stop seeing themselves as emotional caretakers for everyone else and begin seeing themselves as worthy of care too. The strongest empaths are not the ones who suppress their darkness. They are the ones brave enough to face it honestly. The most life-changing decision an empath will ever make is choosing self-respect over emotional dependency. This is not an easy decision because many empaths unknowingly build their identity around being needed. They feel valuable when they are helping, rescuing, fixing, or emotionally supporting others. Their sense of worth becomes tied to how much they can give. Over time, they begin believing that love must be earned through sacrifice. They become afraid that if they stop overextending themselves, people will leave, lose interest, or no longer value them. This fear creates emotional dependency, where the empath depends on external validation to feel secure and worthy. Carl Jung believed that true freedom begins when a person becomes psychologically independent. That means your sense of identity no longer depends entirely on how others see you, need you, or respond to you. For empaths, this lesson is deeply challenging because they are naturally emotionally connected to the people around them. They feel responsible for maintaining harmony. They fear conflict, rejection, and disconnection. So instead of protecting their own emotional well-being, they often tolerate relationships that slowly drain their energy and damage their inner peace. Many empaths remain in emotionally unhealthy situations far longer than they should because they confuse attachment with love. They continue giving chances to people who repeatedly disrespect them. They ignore red flags because they see potential instead of reality. They stay emotionally available to people who only appear when they need something. And the painful truth is that emotional dependency can make an empath accept less than they deserve simply because they fear being alone. But there comes a moment when the exhaustion becomes impossible to ignore. You begin realizing that constantly carrying everyone else emotionally has left you disconnected from yourself. You notice how anxious you feel whenever someone is upset with you. You notice how difficult it is to say no without guilt. You notice how much of your peace depends on external approval. This is the moment where transformation becomes possible because awareness is the beginning of freedom. Self-respect changes everything. The moment an empath begins valuing their own emotional health, their entire life starts shifting. They stop chasing validation from people who only appreciate them when they are overgiving. They stop explaining their boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. They stop shrinking themselves to fit inside unhealthy relationships. Instead, they begin protecting their energy with intention and clarity. This does not mean becoming cold, selfish, or emotionally detached. It means understanding that your compassion should include yourself too. Healthy boundaries are not punishments. They are acts of self-preservation. Jung believed that individuation, becoming your true self, requires separating your identity from the expectations and emotional control of others. That means learning to tolerate disappointment, misunderstanding, and even temporary loneliness in order to remain loyal to yourself. Some people will resist this version of you. The people who benefited most from your lack of boundaries may accuse you of changing. And they are right. You are changing. You are no longer abandoning yourself to maintain emotional approval. You are no longer measuring your worth by how much pain you can endure silently. You are no longer allowing guilt to control your decisions. The empath who learns self-respect becomes emotionally powerful because they finally understand that protecting their peace is not selfish. It is necessary. The moment you stop needing permission to value yourself is the moment your real freedom begins.